Hello, I'm Andrea Houchard and I'm with the Sedona Philosophy Circle. The Sedona Philosophy Circle, really what it is embedded in the name. So it's about Sedona, this place where we are. It's about philosophy, which is really just a way of understanding ourselves, each other, and the world so that we can make good decisions in it. And the circle represents the way that we do that, which is by coming together and acknowledging each person there and giving them an opportunity to contribute. And we're starting out with a conversation series this summer that focuses on where we are, this place of Sedona. We'll start talking about the slide fire, which is an issue that's had a tremendous impact on us all. And we'll look at things, not only the technical facts of what happened with the fire, there's a lot of information about that, but ethically, what should we do now? What does that tell us about our obligation to this place where we live? And how do we enjoy these public lands? We'll look at aesthetic issues, issues regarding recreation, issues involving policy, and the environment. I think that the moral aspect of the slide fire in particular is really grounded in questions about what we should do next. Often when you have a tragedy like this, everyone is focused on getting the fire contained, protecting the structures, and we're all so grateful for the good work that was done by the firefighters, and we're just happy that everything in Oak Creek Canyon was preserved. But it should leave us with questions about what to do next and what our obligations are, if anything, living in this region to prevent things like the fire. We do know that it was caused by a human, so we have to ask ourselves as humans, what should we be doing, if we should be doing anything, to prevent things like this from happening in the future? We hope to have participation from the Forest Service at these meetings, and we hope that there may be some citizen ideas that they will find useful and they can use in their plan. We are in Sedona at Java Love Cafe. Well, I think that one of the reasons we're here is because this is where some of the people of Sedona come together to talk to each other, and it really symbolizes what the Sedona Philosophy Circle is about. What makes the Philosophy Circle somewhat different than a conversation you might ordinarily have at a cafe is that we apply a really rigorous standard to investigate things and use philosophical concepts to help illuminate things that are of interest to us.
Subject could be. What about philosophy?
Philosophy is the broadest subject. Literally, philosophy just means the love of wisdom. Philo is love, sophos is wisdom. That's why a lot of philosophers have daughters named Sophia. But really, if you look at philosophy, especially when it was originally practiced, about 4th or 5th century in Greece, it was really just friends coming together and talking to each other, trying to understand the world, the nature of the world, trying to understand each other, how they should treat one another, trying to decide how they should live in the world. So we're really taking philosophy back, not the way that it's practiced in academies today, but we're looking back to philosophy as a form of friendship, discussion, and understanding. I think we can understand the great relief that many of us feel that the fire was contained and that it was handled so expertly and no one was hurt. But I think it raises important questions about what we should do next. And so while there is a temptation to forget about the fire and move on, what we want to encourage people to do now is to think about what we should do next to prevent this from happening in the future, if we should prevent this from happening in the future. There are a number of actions that were taken that were very strategic. So the goal with the fire was not simply to put it out as expeditiously as possible, but there's an overall larger strategy. And so this will give people an opportunity to explore those strategies. Sure. We really want to give people an opportunity to explore ideas that they might take for granted. I think environmental ethics is something we hear about all the time, but we don't really consider what that means to have an ethical responsibility to our environment. Certainly it's different than ethical obligations or responsibilities we have to other human beings. We can understand what those are pretty easily because we're relevantly similar creatures. But if I have an ethical obligation to a region, or even to a particular environment like a tree, what does that mean? Certainly it's significantly different than the ethical responsibilities I have to other people. So we'll be exploring the very idea of an environmental ethic, which again is a word we hear all the time, but when we really start to think about what that is, it's not so straightforward. I think often when we hear philosophy, people will say, this is my philosophy, or here's a philosophy that I ascribe to. And the philosophy circle doesn't view philosophy as a doctrine. We view philosophy as an activity, an active thinking about and investigating problems and issues. And so we don't suppose that we have the answer to how we should live or the answer to these questions, but we think that there can be better and worse answers, and we think that we can discover these things most effectively by coming together and sharing with each other. There's something that happens in the process of dialogue and discovery. That's why people enjoy being together, and it's our view that we can gain more insight by coming together and discussing these things than we can sitting at home alone reading books or writing in journals. That's not to say that those things aren't valuable. They are, and people's private experiences enrich the discussion in that way. But we believe that there's something really valuable about coming together in a circle as a community and talking about the things that matter most. We have all sorts of community gathering spots, and Java Love is a great one. We love to come here. What we do at the circle events that makes it a little bit different is that we do lend some structure to the discussion and have certain key points that we'll want to focus on. So in a way, what makes this different from coming to a coffee shop and talking to your friends is that we've outlined certain key considerations that we think will be particularly useful in illuminating the topic. It's something that's really grown out of the Philosophy in the Public Interest program at NAU. That's a program that I direct and founded 3 years ago, and it's partly because of the success of that program that we've decided to expand. Philosophy in the Public Interest was the winner in 2013 of the American Philosophical Association's Prize for Excellence and Innovation in Philosophy Programs, so we'd like to keep innovating with more philosophy programs now. We go deeper in two ways, at least two ways, but one of those is by asking people to reflect on how these things matter in their own lives. So in the philosophy circle, it will really be not just an abstracted discussion about the topics in general, but we'll relate these topics back to how they matter in the lives of the individuals. And that's one way of going deeper. Another way is by introducing technical philosophical distinctions. And that's what we'll do at the circle, so you'll have to come and experience that for yourself. The Sedona Philosophy Circle tells us, on the one hand, where we are, but Sedona conveys more than that. It conveys a way of being that's very deliberate about living, and that's why this is the perfect place to do philosophy, not only because it's a gorgeous place that inspires us, but also because the people that are here are people that care about the world and how they live their lives. Our goal definitely is to have a positive impact in the world. And often people think of philosophy as navel-gazing or something that doesn't have a practical effect, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Most major political movements in the world have been affected by philosophical theories. And Aristotle said, philosophy cannot just be mere thought. It must be practical and goal-oriented. So while we think these discussions will be enriching and motivating, the real value will happen in what follows from them. Yes, it's Monday, June 9th, from 4 o'clock to 5:30 p.m. It's on State Route 89A, 3190 State Route 89A, which is on the corner of 89A and Dry Creek Road. It's on the northwest corner in the famous pizza building on the second floor, Suite 600. So on June 16th, we'll discuss what is an environmental ethic. On June 23rd, we'll have a conversation about the Grand Canyon, and we'll close the series on June 30th with a discussion about beauty and the sublime. I think Sedona is unique, of course, because of the beautiful place that it is, but equally because of the people that live here. Very few of us have ended up in Sedona by accident. Most people make a deliberate choice to come and live here, and they're inspired not only by natural beauty, but very often by a way of living. The Sedona Philosophy Circle tells us, on the one hand, where we are, but Sedona conveys more than that. It conveys a way of being that's very deliberate about living, and that's why this is the perfect place to do philosophy, not only because it's a gorgeous place that inspires us, but also because the people that are here are people that care about the world and how they live their lives. Right, these are some of the practical, action-based things that follow from these discussions, and that's the great thing about them. They have practical value or instrumental value as well as intrinsic value. And if you want to understand the difference between intrinsic value and instrumental value, we'll cover it at the Philosophy Circle. But basically, that's just a way of saying that these are valuable in and of themselves for the experience people have in the conversation. Just being there is an enriching experience. But that's not the only value of the Philosophy Circle. Certainly the most important value is what people take from the conversation and decide to do. And if we can in some way contribute to the Forest Service, we would be honored to do that. One thing about philosophy that maybe we forget, and I'm quoting Aristotle again, so you can tell he's one of my favorites, but he says, philosophy begins in wonder. And I think that, again, that's why the Sedona Philosophy Circle is such a good place to do this work, because I think that people that are drawn to Sedona have a sense of wonder about their lives and about what we can accomplish in this world. That's right. So this format differs from many of the public conversations that we have, because often, and understandably, when people gather to have a discussion, it's to take a vote or decide on a course of action that the whole collective can agree upon. There's a lot of focus on public discussions around civility and consensus. And we think civility is essential. Certainly these will be civil affairs. We won't be screaming at each other at the Philosophy Circle. But we think of civility as a necessary but not a sufficient condition for a really deep and meaningful conversation. So we want to go beyond that and apply a really rigorous standard. And we're interested in all sorts of views, but we want to really understand the reasoning behind it, and we want to assess the quality of that reasoning. We want to assess the quality of the evidence or the reasons that support someone's point of view. We also aren't really interested in building consensus. That's not to say that if a consensus emerges, that's problematic. That's a fine thing. But what we're really interested in doing is exploring a range of ideas. So while there are real practical reasons for bringing people together and settling a discussion, what we want to do in some ways is just the opposite of that. We're trying to complicate the discussion and make sure that we're exploring each position more deeply. We don't think that these are questions that can be settled with finality, but we do think that they are questions that can enrich our understanding of the world and enrich our understanding of ourselves in the world. So please join us for our initial discussion on Monday, June 9th. We'll discuss the slide fire from 4 to 5:30 on the corner of Dry Creek Road and 89A. We hope to see you there.